Well, I don't know how many of you are still watching. I don't know how many of you are still tapped into the Pittsburgh Pirates, and I'm assuming probably not many of you with football on the horizon. But the Pirates are still playing and actually are coming off of a pretty exciting game. In fact, a victory for the Pirates, winning it in the bottom of the ninth. So it ends up being in heroic fashion, not necessarily with heroics off of somebody's bat, a weird way to win it, but actually some luck falling in the Pirates' favor, which has certainly not been the norm this year. I am your host, Mike Asti, and this is the Pirates edition of Pittsburgh Postgame here on Pittsburgh Sports Live. And for this broadcast, as the Pirates are 5-4 victors over the Chicago White Sox, I'm going to be joined by the host of the Metro News Hotline show across West Virginia, Dave Weekley, and a kind of colleague of mine. I contribute for him a lot, so I'm happy to have him join me for this one. And first off, Dave, I appreciate you joining me here. Tried to get you on a few in the past, weren't able to coordinate the schedule, so I'm happy we're able to do this. I enjoy the Steelers blanket there in the background and kind of the books back there. So I wonder how many of those you read back there behind you in that bookshelf. But I appreciate
a couple of those.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm glad we're able to work this out because we wanted to try to do this a couple of other times.
Right.
And one thing led to another. I couldn't do it. And the season's coming to an end. Okay. We've only got like 3 weeks left. So I'm happy to jump on here with you.
Yeah.
Cut me open, man. I'm a Pirates guy. I'm a baseball guy. I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, no, I know you're a baseball guy, and I know the season was almost ending, and we got some other West Virginia media here that I know throughout these post game shows that are also Pirate guys. So I definitely wanted to include you in that. And Dave, we actually had, number one, generally hosting these post game shows and running the gauntlet for the Pirates, especially for a team that's not winning. I'm going to be doing it for the Steelers, and that might be a little different experience. We'll see. But it does become a grind on us and media as well. And I'm sure the fans watching, if you are watching, where I was excited this game was moving along. It was a fast-paced game early on. It was no score through 4 or 5, but it was moving. And then, of course, I taunted the baseball gods. The game then dragged on. It was tied. I was actually about to message you and say that we're going to put a cap on this probably at 10:30 or 11 at the latest because, at this point, the games are meaningless, so we could do that. But they ended up making that not necessary and end up getting the victory nonetheless. 5-4 win again. The Pirates now 14-26. The White Sox 26-16 on the season. So it was a fun way to end. This team seems like they care. They're dogpiling at the end of this thing. The young players are the ones that are leading the team to victory, no matter how they end up with the win. What do you make of this one?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, the Pirates finally get a win for Joe McGrain. This was the first game all season long where the Pirates opening day starter started a game and they won.
Right.
He didn't get the win, but at least he was the starter and they finally got a win. The other thing is, I know we're ready to start handing off to college football and the NFL with the Steelers playing the Giants this weekend. But honestly, Ke'Bryan Hayes at bats are must-see TV at this point. You take a look at the Pirates up and down the lineup. The batting averages are low. The OBP is low. Ke'Bryan Hayes and Egon, they're the only guys who are really swinging a bat. One of the things I really loved about Hayes, and I got a chance to see a lot of these guys come through Charleston when they were playing for the West Virginia Power. Hayes, I know a lot of people looking at him. He's such a relatively new player. He made his major league debut last week. That his stance is a little open, and you're always concerned about that. He's going to be able to develop a lot of power, but his key hit tonight, he was able to drive a ball off the Clemente wall for a triple that got the Pirates started. They got a little 2-out lightning going after they fell behind 3-0. So, a win's a win, man. 5-4, we'll take it. And I have to say, I'm so envious of the White Sox lineup. You look at the White Sox, what they're doing this year. You'd like to think that could be Pittsburgh at some point in the future, right? The White Sox were a total teardown, and now you look up and down their lineup. They have so much stuff. They have speed at the top and Abreu at cleanup and Moncada and Jimenez. They have so many young, exciting players up and down the lineup. When you look at a game like this and the way Kreese pitched tonight for the White Sox, you're thinking, how are the Pirates going to win this game? But somehow they hung in and did. They made some key plays.
They did, and they hung on. And even earlier in the year, they were fighting in games and trying to come back in games. They just couldn't end up with those victories because they just flat out aren't the more talented team on pretty much any given night. But you mentioned what Ke'Bryan Hayes has meant to this team, and we touched on this in past post-game shows, that once Ke'Bryan Hayes was called up, and that was a little bit of a controversy because you lose the service time and the Super Plus and all of that. But they rarely get to that with any of the veteran players anyway. And he has galvanized this team where you see players slapping high fives and dogpiling and really getting into it. If you didn't know the record, if you didn't know the season, if you didn't know this team, and you just started watching the last week or two, you would think this was a contending team just for the vibe around them, even though they're clearly not near that. The Pirates do beat the White Sox here tonight, 5-4, bottom of the ninth, now 14-26 on the year. You mentioned Ke'Bryan Hayes and his stance and what he's done offensively, and we know what he's done defensively from his minor league days, winning Gold Gloves defensively in the minors, as big as that is. From what you've seen from Musgrove so far, because you mentioned him as a starter, he was okay. Earlier in the year, he would go deep in games, but they wouldn't win. He then had that month and a half off. Do you have any thoughts of him and the future of him? Because this starting rotation, there now are some building blocks, it seems, offensively. And there might not be that McCutchen player, but there are some players that Reynolds picking it up, and same thing with Ke'Bryan Hayes. But pitching-wise still seems to be a problem. Do you have any thoughts on what you see from Musgrove and the rest of this rotation in terms of moving forward?
Well, I think it's going to be interesting to see what the rotation even is going to look like last year, because Sherrington really didn't get any offers for Musgrove at the trading deadline that he felt strongly enough to pull the trigger. Yeah. So you've got Musgrove, you've got Kuhl, you've got Keller. Mm-hmm. We'll see what happens when they send that right-handed rookie out there tomorrow night. I like Joe. I really do. I mean, he's a battler. He likes to eat innings. Plus, how are you supposed to interpret a season like this? How are you supposed to interpret what a guy does in a 60-game season?
Right.
I mean, this is the 1/3 of what normally a season would be. Right. Musgrove got hurt, but who knows? I mean, if this was a 162-game season, and it would be only 162 games, nobody's would have projected the Pirates for the postseason. This could have been the start of something really, really good. I just think that the Pirates are better off with Joe than without him. I think obviously it depends on what they could get in a trade. But let me ask you this. We were talking about Ke'Bryan Hayes. Yeah. Who is the face of the 2021 Pirates?
See, that's the thing, because we've talked about that a lot too, that as much as I like Ke'Bryan Hayes and he's an exciting player, great defensively, he's giving you more offensively now than you would have thought. Who knows what that's going to lead to the future, but still, Brian Reynolds, certainly he's been struggling this year, and he might not be what he was last year, but you figure him to be part of the future. Josh Bell gets a double in this game. He picks it up a little bit today, but he's clearly not a part of the future. I would imagine that next year, if he does anything semblance of respectability, he's probably going to be traded. It's shocking, and it was this weird anomaly this year that he managed somehow to be a first baseman who struggles defensively. So you would figure that if there's a universal DH, that would increase his trade value. He managed to have a universal DH and actually decrease his trade value still, because he just wasn't hitting. So he couldn't be moved, and he's still going to be there, but he won't be there forever. I don't feel like they have that McCutchen player. I feel like that if you're going to compare this to 2010 or 2009, the building blocks of the 13 to 15 run, even then, Pirate fans could say, okay, this team isn't winning now, but when they win, it's going to be led by Andrew McCutchen. I don't know if when this team wins, and it's still 3-4 years down the road, likely that it's going to be led by Ke'Bryan Hayes or Brian Reynolds. They may be a better Robin to somebody else's Batman whenever this finally does happen, if it ever does really with this group. So I don't think that person's on this team. Polanco's going to be gone at some point.
What about Cruz?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't have any optimism that any of those players scream to be that McCutchen face of the franchise. They're nice pieces maybe you want to keep around. What I do want to ask you about, though, as we round things out again, Dave Weekley here, Mike Asti on Pittsburgh Sports Live, the Pirates edition here of Pittsburgh Postgame on PSL. Gonzalez, Stallings, these are players that they're not going to be building blocks for the future necessarily. They're not going to be that McCutcheon player, but these are players that have kind of come out of nowhere and they've gave you more than you would have thought. Any thoughts on them in terms of, do either one of those scream for you as a starting third baseman or a starting catcher? Nobody would have said that a month or so ago, but could you start next season with these two in the starting lineup, especially defensively for what they bring, both with a web gem quality defensive play in this win?
Well, you're exactly right about that. I mean, Stallings didn't even warrant a spot on the 40-man roster last year.
Right.
They let him go. I think he's pretty solid behind the plate. He made a couple of really good plays tonight. Made a great tag on that throw from Reynolds to get a runner out at the plate. Egon, how gutsy was that play in the top of the ninth inning after Anderson had doubled? Egon with one out went to third and cut down the lead runner. That was a gutsy play.
Play of the game, maybe.
Bang play.
Yeah,
It was a bang bang, a very aggressive, confident play by Egon. And the other thing is, I mean, they're really not paying him hardly anything. He's making what, like $720,000 a year? He's a perfect Pirate. Yeah, absolutely. I think both of those guys are going to be parts of this team going forward.
Yeah, he definitely is a perfect Pirate for sure. And they do fit into young players that, granted, you don't know how they're going to do next year when hopefully there's a full season, because these guys started to have a resurgence. Even Polanco started to hit a little bit better. Brian Reynolds started to pick it up a little bit better once this team was well out of it. So there's no pressure there. You don't know how they're necessarily going to respond when the games matter a little bit more, at least the start of next season. And Stallings, it would be interesting if he could actually snag this team MVP award that I've been promoting him for, because I feel like he certainly could potentially argue for it, or at least in the future, just for the fact of who his father is, that I feel like everyone's kind of washed away. But his father is the former head coach of the Pitt men's basketball team, who's not popular in Pittsburgh by any means for that tenure at Pitt. So
there's another thing. I mean, how do you gauge this in a 60-game season?
Right.
I mean, Stallings bats in your number 9 hole. I mean, you look at the Pirate lineup all the way up and down, with the exception of Egon and Colin Moran, who hits about 160 or 260. Yeah. There's just no batting average. There's no batting average. There's no OBP. And then you go down to Stallings at the bottom of the lineup. I think he came into the game hitting like 290 tonight. One quick thing about Josh Bell. He's been basically a whipping boy now since the All-Star break of last year. But one of the things he did tonight that I really liked, and you like to see, is he actually went to left field. He had a double that snapped out of a big-time slump and rolled it down into the left field corner and was involved in that rally that got the Bucks back in the game. He's another guy. You look at him and you think, wow, switch hitter with power. Eventually the light is going to come on. But I mean, honestly, how long can you wait? But he's another perfect Pirate. He has virtually no trade value at this point, right? Until he starts to hit, you can't do anything except to run him out there every single night.
Yeah. And I would have imagined that if this was a full regular season, that he might have been a guy that was traded mid-season just for the contractual situation in the future. But Ben Cherington's hands were tied with this not being a full season. All of these players playing worse than themselves, no value being there. And even with more teams in the playoffs, this is a first baseman that pretty much cannot play the field. Yes, there's a universal DH, but if you have a DH who is built like Josh Bell and is not hitting home runs, then what are you going to trade for the guy? So he probably just figured we'll just hang on instead of getting some middle reliever who's way down in the pen that we're not going to use anyway. They may have got some calls with the value.
I kind of like the way that the Pirates are just like moving some of these chess pieces around to kind of.
I was going to mention that. Yeah.
Attract other teams. I mean, Frazier was in left. He had a play in the, top of the second inning where, I guess it was in the top of the second inning. He takes 2 steps the wrong way and then come charging in and makes a nice diving catch.
Yeah.
And then Reynolds is in center. And I mean, they're just moving all these pieces around. Tucker got in the game tonight. And, he's been all over everywhere. Newman's playing second base.
Sure.
They're trying a lot of things.
Even batting order wise,
that's
Eric
right.
Gonzalez, I didn't like it. He didn't do well there, but the only thing I did enjoy, and Derek Jones got a lot of criticism this year, a rookie manager, I kind of have defended him because what do you expect with this team? But A few weeks ago, Gonzalez was the only Pirate hitting. So he got rewarded by being a leadoff hitter for 2 weeks. It's almost like college baseball, where if you hit, we're going to put you with more at bats. It didn't work out, but I do actually like moving things around and trying guys in different spots for sure.
Mike, I don't know if you know this about me, but I spent 6 years working for MLB Advanced Media in Tampa Bay.
Okay. I did know that.
And,
Yeah.
when I was down there, that's when Derek Shelton was the hitting coach for Joe Madden.
Okay.
So he took a lot of criticism in that particular period, but I thought a lot of it was unjustified, because when you take a look at some of those teams that Joe Madden and the Rays built, I'd like to see maybe Pittsburgh try to do the same thing. Yeah. Low price fielders, create an unstoppable bullpen, rely on defense in your starting pitching. And I think that just might be the key to what Ben Cherington is trying to do.
Yeah, it could very well be. And Ben Cherington does have a World Series ring, granted with a much higher payroll with the Red Sox. Those Rays teams, they didn't know it at the time. A lot of homegrown talent when they won that pennant in 2008, but they did have Evan Longoria. They did have Carl Crawford. They became legitimate all-stars. Again, I think the problem is, unlike prior to 2013 with the Pirates in that era, I don't know if there's a bona fide Evan Longoria, Carl Crawford player on this team. They thought maybe it could be Bell. Maybe they thought it could be Brian Reynolds. It's seemingly not been those guys, and they've just done nothing but decrease their value to this point. And I do like moving pieces around. So that is interesting. And yeah, you definitely have I didn't know your connection there with Derek Shaw. I knew your baseball background, but I didn't know with him in particular. So that's definitely interesting. Now I'm really glad we got you on one of these before the season closed. That's Dave Weekley. I'm Mike Asti here on the Pirates edition of Pittsburgh Postgame here on Pittsburgh Sports Live. You can hear Dave every day of the week as he hosts the Hotline show across West Virginia. Dave, I do want to do the 3 up, 3 down segment. We touched on this a little bit here. We do 3 up, 3 down every game, win, lose, or draw, and some of these have been rough to get through, but we try. It just obviously up is a positive, down is a negative. I am going to start in terms of an up with Newman, obviously being a part of the winning run at the end, getting a hit earlier. He's been an underrated player that's actually been getting a few hits, sprinkle him in there every now and then recently. He kind of was under the radar in terms of when he was struggling. He wasn't catching as much criticism as the other stars, but he's hitting a little bit better than others now. So he's going to be an up for me. I think, Hayes, of course, is for sure an up for me. And you mentioned the batting averages of a lot of these stars. It's just still putrid. Brian Reynolds hitting 185, Moran 255 with the only real player that's had power this year. Polanco 154, even with the hit at the end. Josh Bell 206, which includes 2 hits in the game. But then you have Ke'Bryan Hayes at 381 so far, Newman 248, which isn't up for me as he's more of a veteran player. Stallings at 294, Frazier 234, not great, and Eric Gonzalez 288. So some of those lesser known players are hitting, so they're going to be ups for me. But any other ups in terms of positive things that happened in this game, or even what you've seen throughout the season?
Well, I'd kind of like to go back to Newman because he showed a little bit of maturity. Listen, he could have easily been the go to this game. You go back to the top of the 5th inning after 1 out, Moncada has a shot to him. He's in short right field. The ball's hit right to him. Right. He's perfectly positioned. He can't make the play. Anderson comes around to score from second base. The next guy up is Grandal, who hits a 2-run homer. The Pirates literally should have been out of that inning with no runs scored. Instead, the White Sox have a 3-0 lead. If that's a rookie player, he probably mentally checks out right there. Instead, Newman hung in and had a couple of hits tonight. So I thought that was a good sign. Here, okay, you want an up? How about the crickets noises in the ballpark tonight? What did you think of that?
Yeah, that was
going on at the beginning of the game. They were obviously manipulating that in the stadium. Right. I thought that was kind of cool. That was funny. I liked it.
I think that's kind of clever. And you're seeing with in the Stanley Cup playoffs, you're seeing in different sporting events, they're pumping in different crowd noise. I mean, they've really had fun in hockey with what they've done. They've had literal fans there and counting them as fans in the stands. Baseball's done a little bit that with different celebrities as these cutouts. And yeah, I do like that stuff. It's kind of fun. We saw the fan jump in the river earlier in the season, would take a shirt off in a game that was meaningless to go get a ball. So those things are up. So yeah, I think that's a funny, the Crickets thing. I think the game speed tonight is another up for me. It moved a little faster than normal here. We're able to finish this even post-game show before 11, which has not always been the case, as you could imagine, with this team. A down for me, though, besides the usual suspects who aren't hitting. It sucks to say this. Never ask us again. It's the bullpen. I mean, the bullpen almost blew this game. This was a game where they were right in there. Musgrove pitched well enough through 4. The bullpen almost blew this game. So the bullpen's been a problem most of the year. And again, it is. So that's going to be a down. Any other downs for you?
You know what? I was
did win.
When I knew I was going to be on with you today, I was really planning on talking about how well the bullpen has pitched lately.
It has.
You know, when you go back to the series against the Reds, I mean, they had 6 innings of scoreless relief. And you know what? I mean, when you watch a Pirate game and you're watching all these games, you're doing the post-game show. I mean, when they're down 3-0, it's like the Pirates are down 15-0. You don't think they're going to be able to score any runs at all. I mean, they had only scored like 11 total runs in the last 4 games. They were hitting coming into this game like .212 against right-handed pitching. And they managed to get 5 runs tonight against a division-leading team.
Yeah.
So I think that's got to be enough. The Pirates offense. They scored more than 4 runs. They got 5 runs. Yeah. And they came back and here was another walk-off win. So that's all up.
Yeah, and I will also say that we have touched on that recently. The bullpen has been better at times than maybe they get credit for. It's not to say it's been good most of the year. It's been bad most of the year, but it's been better at times than they get credit for. And Kyle Dawson and I actually talked about that this past weekend. He's a play-by-play for the Washington Wild Things, and he did mention that the bullpen's been better than you would expect, at least recently, and they're not getting credit for that. So that is a positive. Yeah, this team won, so it's hard to harp on too many downs in this game in particular, outside of the bullpen not doing well in this one.
Hey, let me ask you a question about the wins.
Yeah,
because I was having this conversation with somebody a couple of days ago.
Okay,
I mean, you start looking at the teams now that will have most likely the worst record in baseball. I mean, is it really going to matter when we get down to the end of the season? I mean, wouldn't you love to see the Pirates have a first pick? Don't you want to see the Pirates get the first pick?
Yeah.
I mean, is it really that important to beat out the Nationals?
No, see, that's the thing. That's where it's a catch-22, because as much as fans like seeing the team dogpile and get a win in the bottom of the 9th, and it's definitely going to help maybe mold this team chemistry-wise. That's why you have Key Brian Hayes here. If you wanted to punt the season, you probably keep his service time and don't call him up, because clearly he's going to try to win these games, and he might be the most talented man on the field. However, in all reality, this team losing is better for the franchise. They need to lose. At this point, there is no benefit to winning this year. They need that number 1 overall pick. I don't know how it's question mark how the draft's even going to go. We still don't, until the season officially ends. I'm not confident because of the way the pandemic's been going with the roller coaster. But this team is better off losing. I mean, that's just the reality. The only problem with that is, as you know Derek Chauvin personally. He's a rookie manager. You can only afford to lose so many games in your overall record, or eventually, whenever this team can turn it around, he's going to not be here anymore. You don't know how much rope there's going to be. So he's going to try to win. Hayes is going to try to win. And I do think, as much as this team is better off not winning, one of my downs, and this will be the last one, and it's a major down. It's been pretty much every show except for a couple. Brian Reynolds in particular needs to pick it up. I mean, he is a nice guy. He had that big hit after he became a father. Maybe that was going to galvanize him and get him some pep in his step. But he cannot finish the year hitting below 200. That needs to be a personal goal, that average got to have a 2 in front of it at this point. He really does need to pick it up. Bell is a little bit not really picking it up, but I think more importantly, Reynolds needs to pick it up, because I think everyone's kind of realized Bell is not a part of the future. but Reynolds is. So Reynolds needs to pick it up, or else that's really going to be a problem moving forward. Dave Weekley, again, host of the Hotline show on WV MetroNews throughout West Virginia. Looking ahead, another one with the White Sox, the Royals, the random 4 spot with the Reds that seems like a norm throughout the season. 5 with the Cardinals as they're trying to finally play those games. I don't know if they're ever going to get those games.
But they do.
First. Okay. They got to eventually, at this point, they got to get them in. Yeah. The Cardinals are a playoff team too. Then the Cubs in Cleveland. What are you, as a Pirate fan, as a keen baseball eye, what are you looking for the rest of the year? Are you watching to see how Hayes does and you're entertained by Hayes? I mean, obviously we kind of said we don't want the team to win, but what are you looking for when you watch?
Honestly, as a fan, you can't watch a game and say, hey, it's all evaluation, right?
Okay.
I mean, you get caught up in the games. You want to see the Pirates win.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm just in like a constant evaluation mode, trying to figure out what combination of these guys do I want back next year? Right. I mean, how many of these guys are going to be with the Pirates opening day 2021? I mean, what about Adam Frazier? What do you do with Frazier? How many of these pitchers? You've got a bunch of guys who are going to be up for salary arbitration. How many chips does Ben Sherrington have that he wants to trade? I'm just in a constant mode of trying to evaluate these guys. And, like I say, I'm a baseball guy. This is all ending way too fast. I'll tell you one thing that's starting to perturb me a little bit is seeing stuff about in certain media cities where people are talking about, hey, Team X is going to qualify for the playoffs for the first time since such and such. I mean, I saw that in the White Sox notes tonight. I guess they're going to the playoffs for the first time since 2009. Dude, everybody's making the playoffs this year. If you've got a pulse, you're in the playoffs. Yeah. They're the 7 and 8 teams in the National League most likely are going to have losing records. I mean, the Cardinals basically, how long were the Cardinals off? Like 2.5 weeks? They still might make the playoffs in a 60-game season. Yeah. So don't come to me and tell me about, what a great what a great achievement it was to make the playoffs in this particular season. Say that as a disgruntled Pirate fan.
Yeah, and everyone pretty much is making it, with the exception of the Pirates and a few different teams. And even with the expanded playoffs, it didn't end up helping the Pirates. But yeah, this is absolutely, because that was one of my things that I didn't, as much as you reduced the schedule and you had to, I didn't love expanding the playoffs as much as they did, because it really does water it down. I do kind of want to ask you that because, you're definitely a guy to ask that too quickly. What are your thoughts on, I mean, the expanded playoffs are not going to be a part of life forever, I wouldn't imagine, but just if it is, what are your thoughts on any of these new rules and how many of them would you like to see permanently? Obviously, there's an expanded playoffs that does elicit a lot of under 500 teams making it. We see that in other sports, in the NBA in particular. Kind of sucks when that happens. Baseball's been tighter with less teams making it. That's been kind of part of their history. You make the playoffs, you're basically almost a division winner equivalent in another league. Then you have the runner on second base thing in extra innings. I'm not a fan of that. You have the universal DH. I actually don't mind that. That probably will stay. But out of any of those rules, are you a fan of them? Are you not a fan of them? Do you want any of them to stay? Because it's catastrophic for you as a longtime baseball fan, some of these rules.
Okay. I grew up a Pirate fan. I'm a National League guy at my core.
Okay.
But as I mentioned, 6 years following the AL East, I've converted totally on the DH.
Okay.
You've come to the point now where if you're going to pay a guy $1 million a start, I don't want to see him out for the season trying to slide. Okay. I don't care for that. So I think the universal DH, I think the DH is going to be here because that's what the Players Association wants. I think the DH is here to stay. As far as the runner on second base to begin the 10th inning, it's been curious this year, and I kind of like the strategy of it. Some of the things that are happening. I mean, there was a play last week where Billy Hamilton was trying to steal second. He's trying to steal third base for the Mets, got thrown out, and then a couple of days ago he got waived. And that from directly something that happened because of this rule. The Cubs just picked him up. Yeah. I've enjoyed watching that. And the 7-inning doubleheaders are kind of interesting. But I
Okay.
hope all of that stuff goes away. The other thing about the 10th inning thing is I saw Rob Manfred last week had a big article, a Q&A he did with the Athletic, and he made a comment about this saying that people thought that rule was terrible, but now they think it's okay. Who is saying it's okay? Who is coming out and saying, wow, this has been great for the game? I don't think the fans are.
No, I don't think so.
But you know what? I'll be interested to see what the Players Association has to say about that, because their perspective on it has got to be, hey, if we can get away from these 15, 16, 17 inning games, less likely that our players are going to be injured. They may be for it. I'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I don't love it either. And I don't know who Rob Manfred is talking to or who he's hearing from, but it seems like he's not really in touch with anything that's going on in terms of his comments way back in the offseason when he called the Commissioner's Trophy a piece of tin. He didn't really care for the championship trophy that they're supposed to be trying to win. So you take his comments with a grain of salt, but just in general, that's the rule that I do hate the most, just because I feel like it diminishes some of these victories. Certainly in the playoffs, I'm going to really, really dislike it. You're talking about some historic game winners throughout history of the postseason. Even the 2001 World Series, a bloop single ended up winning you a championship. That inning would have been 20 seconds long if they would have started with a runner on second base. It wouldn't even had to get to that with Tony Womack moving himself over and getting over there into position. So it makes it too easy. I don't want to give these wins away, but you did hit the reasoning, I'm sure, and the players probably are going to like it in terms of it's going to avoid these 18-inning long games. It's going to avoid probably me having to punt post-game shows. That's nice, actually. I do actually like the 7-inning doubleheaders. I don't mind that. If you're going to play a doubleheader, I could see making those 7 innings. The runner on second base might be better for the casual fan to make games shorter, to make it more of a viewer's game, viewer-friendly. But I don't like it. I think it waters down the victories for sure. I do like the universal DH. I don't like the expanded playoffs. I'm scared we're going to see all of these moving forward because Rob Manfred seems like he seems to be a fan of these. It almost seems like he's trying to make some comments to pitch them that, oh, it's okay, we're going to do this. So we'll see. But
as far as the expanded playoffs are concerned, once they get a little taste of that money, they're going to like it.
Yeah.
As a longtime baseball fan, I'm not sure how I'm going to feel about this playoff selection show where teams are going to select who they're going to play in the first round. I think that's really going to be very curious to see. I wouldn't be surprised that if one round of the playoffs go away when we go back to a regular 162 game season. But I think expanded playoffs, some sort of an expanded playoffs, I think those are here to stay.
Yeah, and people didn't like the advent of interleague play. People didn't like the advent of the wild card in general. People didn't like the wild card game and adding a second wild card. I didn't mind any of those additions because I think those were necessary. You can't only have 3 teams in the postseason. That was a little bit too tight. And I don't mind adding one more round. That'll be okay. But I think getting it like this, where it's basically an NCAA tournament and you're having all these teams below 500 and you're doing selection shows, I think this is getting a little, as the word I like to say, asinine, but we'll see. I'm also a guy that prefers that if you have the best record, you should be rewarded with the easiest path, but that seemingly has never been with baseball once. They did do it for a while there after finally scrapping away the rule after the All-Star game of that ridiculousness of the winner of the All-Star game got home field for a while. So at least that's gone. But we're probably going to get somewhat of an expanded playoffs, even if we don't get this exact postseason style here, but it's going to be different. COVID has allowed a lot of people that wanted to tweak things and try things, the canvas to do so. And I do get why that's necessary this year with getting this season over with quickly. But it sounds like, I guess we'll kind of end it this way. It sounds like you're kind of leaning where some are, that depending on who wins, maybe this World Series champion is probably going to have an asterisk next to their name. There's going to be a ring. There will be a virtual Zoom. I don't know if they can do a parade or not, but we'll see how things go and see how it's perceived. I don't know if there's going to be at least not a literal asterisk, but a symbolic one.
I don't know. I think in 10 years, nobody's going to care. I think they're going to look back on this season and they'll say, wait a minute, the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Dodgers, the Cubs, the Cardinals,
teams, yeah.
all these teams participated. Think about this. The team that wins this year's World Series is going to have to go through more rounds of the playoffs than any team in the history of the game.
That's true.
It may not be the best method, but it's the only method we got.
Yeah, and it's better than nothing. It is better than nothing. I'm happy we have baseball. It's better to be able to complain about baseball and watch baseball, even if it's losing baseball, than nothing at all. So
look at this. We're having a baseball conversation. We're having a baseball conversation right now. Who would have believed that in May? Right? So we're having a baseball conversation. And we're having a conversation after a Pirates win.
So you were good luck. We're doing it off of a Pirates win. We're doing it virtually. So maybe they'll do the World Series celebration virtually. We'll see how that can go. But yeah, they're going to have to win more rounds. So maybe it'll be an asterisk positively. Maybe it'll say this team had the toughest road ever when they put that plaque up wherever they want to put it. Dave Weekley, I appreciate it, man. I'm glad we got to do this before the season closed out. It's a reduced schedule. We're talking about all these teams and what they can do and all these guys turning things around and struggling so much in these reduced schedules. You know as well as I, and I'm sure you're going to throw up some of those numbers there. A guy like Chipper Jones, for example, in the year 2000 when he won his MVP, a lot of the time, those players didn't even start hitting until 80 games into a season and end up winning an MVP. So we're not even going to complete that this year. So it is one of those years where as much as these guys need to be better, they haven't been good. They're really struggling. They should be better. It's hard. You got to take this season with a little bit of a grain of salt. It's hard to really gauge this year off of this schedule, but the future certainly is well in doubt. Dave Weekley, host of the Hotline Show on WV MetroNews across West Virginia. I definitely appreciate the time. I'm Mike Asti, and this was another edition of the Pirates Postgame Show here on Pittsburgh Sports Live, an exciting one, because the Pirates win this one. They win it in the bottom of the ninth. And as Dave put it, we're talking baseball. We're talking baseball even right before Steelers season. And we're actually talking baseball after a Pirates victory, even though that was something that nobody ever could have imagined at all, even weeks ago.